Did you know that dogs can be used to detect cancer in humans? That's right. These furry little friends of ours have an incredible sense of smell that can pick up on some pretty subtle things, like whether or not you have cancer. And it's not just a fun party trick either. It turns out that dogs can actually be trained to sniff out cancer cells with an accuracy of up to 97%. So if you're wondering how your dog knows when you're feeling under the weather, or if you should get a second opinion on that mammogram, keep watching. We'll tell you all about it. How is it possible that dogs can detect cancer? Well, it all comes down to their sense of smell. Dogs have an extraordinary sense of smell compared to humans. They have about 300 million scent receptors, while we only have about 5 million. What this means is that dogs can detect extremely small amounts of chemical compounds that make up smells. In fact, they can pick up on chemicals that are 10,000 times more concentrated than what we humans can detect. That's a pretty impressive superpower. But why does this matter for cancer detection? Well, here's where things get really interesting. It turns out that cancer cells release certain volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, as they grow. These compounds are produced by the metabolic activity of cancer cells, and they differ from the types of VOCs produced by normal cells. What's more, each type of cancer seems to have its own unique combination of VOCs. For example, lung cancer cells release a distinct set of VOCs that differ from those released by breast cancer or colorectal cancer cells. Now here's the amazing part. Even though these VOCs are produced in very small amounts, like parts per billion, dogs can still smell them. That's because their noses are so sensitive. They can pick up on these subtle scents and identify the specific type of cancer that they're dealing with. And don't worry, we're not just talking about dogs sniffing people's butts here. There are several studies that show that dogs can detect cancer in breath, sweat, urine, or blood samples. For example, one study published in the journal PLOS Medicine found that dogs could accurately detect lung cancer by sniffing breath samples taken from patients. Another study published in the journal Cancer Research found that dogs could detect skin cancer by sniffing tissue samples. And yet another study published in the journal Clinical Cancer Research found that dogs could detect breast cancer by sniffing urine samples. The researchers in these studies first collected samples from patients and then gave them to the dogs for training. The dogs were able to learn which samples smelled like cancer and which ones didn't. And the results were pretty impressive. In some cases, the dogs could detect cancer with an accuracy of up to 97%. That's better than many of the current medical tests we use to diagnose cancer. You might be wondering how this is possible. After all, how can a dog smell cancer better than a human doctor? Well, it all has to do with the dog's nose. As we mentioned earlier, dogs have a much better sense of smell than humans. But they also have a superpowered nose that can sniff out specific compounds in the air. You see, when we breathe in a scent, our noses pick up on the chemicals that make it up. But we can only detect a limited range of chemicals. Dogs, on the other hand, can smell chemicals that are much smaller or larger than what we can detect. They can also smell a much wider variety of chemicals. That's why they can pick up on scents that we completely miss. And when it comes to cancer detection, that means they can sniff out the unique combination of chemicals that make up each type of cancer. Another reason why dogs are so good at detecting cancer is because they don't get distracted by irrelevant scents. They can focus on the specific scent they're looking for, even in the presence of other smells. This is important because it means that they can accurately identify cancer cells without being thrown off by other factors such as a patient's age, weight, or gender. And finally, dogs are superpowered sniffers. They can sniff out cancer cells that are hidden deep inside the body. They can do this by smelling the VOCs that are released by cancer cells. Even if the tumor itself is not visible, the dog's sensitive nose can still pick up on the subtle scent of cancer. This makes dogs an invaluable tool for early detection of cancer, since many cancers are most treatable when they're still in their early stages. So what exactly is happening in the dog's brain when they smell cancer? Well, when a dog sniffs something, they're actually taking in a small amount of the substance they're smelling through their nostrils. The scent particles then travel to the roof of their mouth, where they dissolve in a thin layer of mucus. Once the scent is dissolved, it can bind to receptors in the dog's nose. These receptors are located in a part of the brain called the olfactory bulb. When a scent molecule binds to a receptor, it sends a signal to the brain that tells the dog what it's smelling. In the case of cancer, the dog's brain is able to identify the specific combination of chemicals that make up each type of cancer. This allows the dog to distinguish between different types of cancers and to identify cancer cells even in the early stages of the disease. And while you might be thinking that this all sounds pretty simple, it's actually a very complex process. The dog's brain has to process millions of scent molecules every second and then sort through all the information to identify the specific scent they're looking for. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but the dogs do it with ease. Now you're probably wondering, if dogs are so good at detecting cancer, why don't we use them more often? Well, it turns out that we actually do use dogs to detect cancer in some cases. For example, there's a group of dogs in the UK that are trained to detect prostate cancer in men by sniffing urine samples. The dogs can identify men with prostate cancer with an accuracy of up to 94%. But there are a few reasons why we don't use dogs to detect all types of cancer. First of all, it can be expensive to train and maintain a team of cancer-detecting dogs. And secondly, the dogs can only alert to the possibility of disease. They can't actually provide a diagnosis. So if a dog alerts to the potential presence of cancer, further testing would be needed to confirm the diagnosis. Finally, it's important to note that dogs do not replace official medical diagnosis. They can only alert to the possibility of disease. If a dog sniffs a person and identifies cancer cells, the person should seek medical attention. The dog is not a doctor and cannot provide a diagnosis or treatment plan. It's also important to remember that not all dogs can detect cancer. Only dogs with a keen sense of smell and the ability to focus on specific scents can be trained to do this job. In conclusion, dogs are truly amazing creatures who can do things we humans can only dream of. Their sense of smell is so powerful that they can sniff out cancer in its early stages, even when it's hidden deep inside the body. By understanding how dogs smell cancer, we can develop new ways to use their incredible abilities to save lives. So the next time you see your furry friend, be sure to give them an extra scratch behind the ears. Who knows, they might just be saving your life. If you learned something new today, please let us know in the comments below. We love hearing what you have to say. Until next time, stay curious and keep asking questions. We've got plenty more videos coming your way.